Perseverance. The act of persisting in doing something, despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. Who is the embodiment of perseverance? Ludwig van Beethoven? Steven Spielberg? Vincent van Gogh? No, absolutely not. There is only one thing in the history of the world that is the embodiment of perseverance. If you have no idea what the hell you just saw, that's fine. I'm not really surprised. Robot Wars has effectively been dormant for the past 6 years, and there's no indication of it returning to TV, considering the BBC cancelled it in early 2018 after a very brief revival. The closest we've gotten to any new content is the occasional live show where some of the past winners have competed, but nothing beyond that. Despite this, it was a great, unique show when it was on the air, and had some fucking awesome looking robots, including this very familiar looking blue prick. This is Kronic the Wedgehog. Originally built by engineers Dave Lang, John Lang, and Mike Gardner, Kronic was submitted for the third series of Robot Wars back in 1999, where it failed to qualify due to it being, in its creator's own words, not very well built. On their now defunct website they stated, "The shell actually wobbled if you touched it, and the only weapon was a spike which fired out of the nose. It would have been severely wrecked." A year later in 2000, Team Kronic came back together to redesign Kronic. They reused the original frame, added a front flipper, and attached the spike to its back before taking it to the first ever Robot Wars live event, which also served as the series' official qualifiers. Following 2 head-to-head fights against other hopeful competitors, the audience and the judges voted for Kronic to take part in the upcoming 4th series, where it avoided being eliminated in its first round, and managed to win the second against the Dark Destroyer, something that Team Kronic didn't expect. Unfortunately, their successes didn't last much longer, as Team Kronic would be forced into the pit of oblivion by Sir Killalot, and eliminated from the competition. But, as a great man once said, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And by God did Team Kronic continue. Dave, John, and Mike got to work revamping Kronic again, giving it a sleeker design that would be faster and more powerful, as well as making sure it could contend with opposing robots that had stronger flippers equipped, by giving it a second one, which replaced the spike on the previous version. They also gave Kronic an aluminium shell rather than the weaker polycarbonate one they had used before. Most importantly though, Kronic got a new name, Kronic 2. Yeah. Which they definitely didn't say after getting eliminated in the first round of the 5th series. The team admitted on their website that they had chosen the wrong batteries, causing Kronic to lose power during the fight, and its spikes catching fire probably didn't help much either. The team wasn't going to give up though. They said, better luck next year on their website, and got back to work. Kronic 2 was rebuilt from scratch, along with the in its name getting dropped, as it was stupid. That's not my opinion either, by the way. Team Kronic themselves said that. This new version of Kronic 2 would win a spot in Series 6 after winning the qualifying battle against 4 opposing robots, and managing to flip one of them out of the arena itself. It survived the first round of the heats, and put on a pretty spectacular effort in its next fight, where it managed to roll onto a carbon dioxide vent to get itself restarted, and drove underneath Growler, one of the house robots, to try and flip it over. Sadly though, this would prove futile, and Kronic 2 would be counted out of the match on top of being shoved onto the flame pit by Growler. However, great men, robots, are forged in fire, and for the 7th and final series of the original Robot Wars run, Team Kronic decided to revert the robot's name back to simply Kronic the Wedgehog, disregarding the numbering and giving it a minor redesign. Like before, it made it through the first round of the heats, but was defeated in the second when it competed against Mighty Mouse, who put on a very surprising performance where it managed to outrun Kronic, dodge its attempts to flip it over, and ram it towards Growler, the same robot who had caused its elimination in the prior series. Ultimately, Kronic's motor burnt out, and it was hammered to death by Mr. Psycho. This was Kronic's final appearance on Robot Wars due to the show being cancelled in 2004, but it wasn't finished competing yet. Dave, John and Mike got back together to once again redesign Kronic for the live competitive circuit, making the flipper the same length as the entire front wedge, which gave it the ability to flip some robots over 6 feet into the air, and in some cases out of the arena entirely. It entered into the 2004 Roaming Robots Winter Tour, and although it made a good effort by reaching the finals, Kronic would unfortunately, once again, lose. But then, in 2005, the world of robots combat, no, fuck that, the entire world as we know it, was changed forever, when Kronic the Wedgehog took part in that year's Roaming Robots UK Championship. It fought valiantly, its team refusing to let it be taken down. They had made it so close to winning the previous year. They knew it could be done, and they were not going to let it slip from them now. They won the qualifying battles, taking us on to the next set of matches, where they won again. Then, just barely getting through the quarterfinals, Kronic and company made their way to the semis, and won. The stage was set for the final, where they'd compete against the previous year's winner Terahertz, a robot infamous for its axe attachment. This was it. Team Kronic had spent 5 years in the competitive scene by this point, and they had never once given up. No matter what opponent they faced, they persevered. And now that perseverance had been rewarded with a chance of Kronic being crowned the UK's champion fighting robot. All they had to do now was win. And, well... Dave, John, and Mike had achieved victory at last, and satisfied with their time competing, they chose to retire from the sport at the end of 2006. But what about Kronic? What good is a combat robot if it's not going to engage in combat anymore? They thought so too, and decided to sell the Wedgehog on to Team Mad, who would bring Kronic to triumph once again in 2010 and 2011, when it became the Annihilator champion, before finally retiring the robot in 2014. Since then, a new version of Kronic, very creatively renamed Kronic, has competed in BattleBots, the American equivalent of Robot Wars, while the spiritual successor of the original, Apollo, won the 8th series of Robot Wars when the program briefly returned to TV in 2016. And that about does it for Kronic the Wedgehog's story. If you want to learn more about the specifics of the various designs, as well as in-depth coverage of its competitive history, then I highly recommend that you go and check out the Robot Wars wiki. It was a huge help when researching this topic, and explains the technical side of things better than I ever could. Hope you all enjoyed this one. I know it was different from what I usually cover on this channel, but I don't really care. Kronic's fucking cool and you should know about him.